The billionaire's private jet sliced through the midnight sky, unannounced and cloaked in secrecy, as Richard Hargrove stared out the window, his heart pounding with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. For 3 years, he'd been a ghost to his own life, buried in international deals, acquisitions, and a relentless pursuit of wealth that had left him hollow. Tonight, something inexplicable had pulled him back to his sprawling California estate. No warning, no call, just an urgent need to see his daughter, Lily, the only piece of his heart that still felt alive. As the car rolled silently up the driveway, the mansion loomed like a monument to his absence, its windows glowing faintly. He stepped inside, his polished shoes echoing on the marble floor, and froze. There, in the dimly lit living room, was a black maid he'd never seen before, cradling Lily in her arms, singing a soft lullaby. The sight stopped his breath, not because of the stranger, but because Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, was smiling, her face radiant with a peace he hadn't seen in years. In that moment, Richard's world tilted, and a flood of questions crashed over him. Who was this woman? Why was his daughter so attached to her? And why did this tender scene feel like a betrayal of everything he thought he knew? If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected connections, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Let's spread the light together. Richard Hargrove was a man who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will, but standing in the shadows of his own home, he felt powerless. The maid, unaware of his presence, continued to rock Lily gently, her voice a soothing melody that seemed to weave a spell over the room. Her dark skin glistened faintly under the lamplight, her hair pulled back in a simple braid, and her worn apron spoke of long hours and quiet labor. Richard's first instinct was suspicion. His world was one of contracts and calculations, where trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Yet, as he watched, he couldn't deny the warmth in Lily's eyes, the way her tiny hands clung to the woman's arm as if she were an anchor in a storm. Lily had always been reserved, her laughter rare since her mother's death 3 years ago, when a car accident had shattered their family. Richard had buried his grief in work, jetting across continents, leaving Lily in the care of nannies and tutors. He'd convinced himself she was fine, that his wealth provided everything she needed. But now, seeing her so content with this stranger, guilt twisted in his chest like a knife. He stepped forward, his shadow falling across the floor, and the maid's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. The woman's name was Amara, he would later learn, a single mother who'd taken the job as a maid 6 months ago out of desperation. She was 34, with a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her, though her life had been anything but easy. Born in a small town in Georgia, Amara had grown up in a home where love was abundant but money was scarce. Her dreams of becoming a teacher had been derailed by an early pregnancy, a decision to raise her son, Jamal, alone after his father walked away. She'd worked countless jobs, waitress, cleaner, caregiver, always scraping by, always fighting to give Jamal a better life. When the opportunity to work at the Hargrove estate came, it was a lifeline, though the long hours meant she rarely saw her own son, who stayed with her aging mother. Amara had been warned about the Hargrove household, cold, distant, a place where staff were invisible. But when she met Lily, something shifted. The little girl, with her wide, sad eyes and silent demeanor, reminded Amara of Jamal at his loneliest. She couldn't help but reach out, offering small gestures, a story, a song, a hug, until Lily began to open up, her guarded heart unfurling like a flower in spring. Richard, however, saw none of this history in that first moment. All he saw was an outsider in his home, holding his daughter as if she belonged to her. His voice, when he finally spoke, was sharp, demanding to know who she was and why she was with Lily at such a late hour. Amara stood, her movements calm but deliberate, and introduced herself, her voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. She explained that Lily had had a nightmare, that she'd been soothing her back to sleep. Richard's eyes flicked to his daughter, now stirring in Amara's arms, and something in him softened, though he didn't know why. He dismissed Amara curtly, taking Lily upstairs himself, but as he tucked her into bed, her sleepy voice pierced him. "I love Amara, Daddy. She's like a mommy." The words landed like a blow, stirring a storm of emotions, jealousy, shame, and a deep, aching fear that he'd lost his daughter to someone else. He sat by her bedside long after she fell asleep, wrestling with the realization that his absence had created a void, one that this maid, this stranger, had somehow filled. Over the next few days, Richard stayed home, a decision that surprised even himself. He told his assistant to cancel his meetings, ignoring the frantic emails piling up. He wanted to understand what was happening, to reclaim his place in Lily's life. But the more he observed, the more he saw Amara's quiet influence. She wasn't just a maid, she was a presence. She cooked breakfast for Lily, braiding her hair while humming old spirituals. She listened when Lily rambled about her drawings, encouraging her with a patience Richard envied. Amara moved through the house with a dignity that contrasted sharply with its sterile opulence, her every action infused with care. Richard watched from a distance, torn between resentment and curiosity. He couldn't shake the image of Amara and Lily together, the way they seemed to share a language he didn't speak. It gnawed at him, this sense of being an outsider in his own home, and he found himself studying Amara, searching for flaws, for a reason to justify his unease. But Amara wasn't flawless, she was human, and her struggles were etched into her life. Richard overheard her once, on a rare phone call during her break, speaking to her mother about Jamal. Her voice cracked as she asked how he was doing, if he'd eaten, if he missed her. "I'm doing this for him, Mama," she said, and the weight of her sacrifice hung in the air. Richard felt a pang of something unfamiliar, empathy, perhaps, or guilt for judging her so quickly. He began to notice other things, the worn edges of her shoes, the way she stretched her breaks to finish extra work, the quiet pride in her eyes when Lily showed her a new drawing. Amara wasn't just surviving, she was pouring herself into everything she did, including his daughter. It was a kind of strength Richard didn't understand, one that couldn't be bought or negotiated. And it scared him, because it forced him to confront his own shortcomings as a father. The turning point came one rainy afternoon, when Lily fell ill with a fever. Richard, unused to such crises, fumbled through phone calls to doctors, his frustration mounting as Lily whimpered in her bed. Amara, who'd been cleaning downstairs, appeared without being asked, her face calm but focused. She took charge quietly, placing a cool cloth on Lily's forehead, singing softly to soothe her. Richard watched, feeling useless, his wealth and power meaningless in the face of his daughter's pain. When the doctor arrived, Amara stayed, her presence a steady anchor for Lily. Later, as Lily slept, Richard found Amara in the kitchen, washing dishes in the dim light. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice low and halting. He thanked her, the words awkward on his tongue. Amara looked at him, her eyes searching, and nodded. It was a small moment, but it cracked open something in Richard, a willingness to see her, not as a maid or a threat, but as a person. In the weeks that followed, Richard began to change. He spent more time with Lily, reading to her, playing games, rediscovering the sound of her laughter. He asked Amara about her life, tentative at first, then with genuine curiosity. She shared sparingly, her stories of struggle and resilience delivered without self-pity. Richard learned about Jamal, about Amara's dreams, about the love that drove her to keep going. He saw parallels to his own grief, his own fight to hold on to what mattered. Slowly, a bond formed, not romantic, but something deeper, a mutual respect born of shared care for Lily. Richard started to see his wealth differently, not as a shield but as a tool. He offered Amara a raise, then a scholarship for Jamal, gestures she accepted with quiet gratitude. He began to rebuild his relationship with Lily, step by painful step, learning to be present, to listen, to love in the ways she needed. By spring, the Hargrove estate felt different, warmer, alive. Lily's drawings covered the fridge, her laughter echoed through the halls. Amara remained, her role evolving from maid to something closer to family, though she never crossed the boundaries of her position. Richard, too, was transformed, his priorities shifted, his heart softer. He still traveled for work, but he always came home, each return a promise kept. One evening, as he watched Lily and Amara planting flowers in the garden, he realized that his greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account, it was here, in these moments, in the love he'd almost lost. The man who'd once frozen at the sight of a black maid with his daughter now saw Amara for who she was, a woman who'd saved his family, not by wealth or power, but by kindness, by showing him what it meant to truly care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of love and second chances, please like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to Kindness Speaks and let's keep spreading stories that lift us up. And one special request, please leave a comment below, sharing what this story meant to you. Your words could inspire someone else.